Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining our webinar today. A few housekeeping items before we get started. The webinar recording will be available on demand starting tomorrow on the Triblio website. You will receive a link and a follow-up email tomorrow. If you have any questions throughout the webinar, please submit them using the chat box. We will be answering questions at the conclusion of the webinar. We're excited to have you join us today as we have two of the industry's leading ABM experts discussing our topic, Content Can't Be King Without ABM Personalization. I'm happy to introduce to you Andrew Mahr, the Chief Customer Officer here at Triblio. Andrew has spent the last 10 years leading high-performance teams in marketing and has launched thousands of successful ABM campaigns. I'm also excited to introduce Serious Decisions, now part of the Forrester family's Vice President, Principal Analyst of Account-Based Marketing, Bob Peterson. Bob is a marketing industry thought leader with more than 20 years of industry and professional services experience in strategy, marketing, and account management. His primary focus is on driving marketing and sales alignment through account-based strategies. So without further ado, I'm going to pass it along to Andrew and he'll kick us off.
Thanks, Kirsten, for that introduction and the setup. So this is the agenda that we've outlined for today's presentation that we'll be walking everyone through and having a discussion about. If you see anything here that you'll have questions about, feel free to jot those down. We'll have Q&A at the end. The three items that we'll be covering are just what is account-based marketing, just making sure we are getting everyone caught up and onto the same page with that topic. Then why is personalization so important for ABM? There's some great content that Bob's going to be sharing from Serious Research for that. And then finally, how do you orchestrate multi-channel marketing and sales personalization? So keeping in an account-based marketing program, your marketing and sales channels personalized for accounts, but also consistent in the message they're sharing. So for those of you I haven't had the pleasure of meeting yet, as Christian said, my name is Andrew Mahr, and I'm the Chief Customer Officer at Triblio. I've been here for almost 5 years now, so I've had the privilege of seeing hundreds of account-based marketing programs launch through our customers at Triblio and seen the market evolve quite a bit in terms of what it means for a practitioner to get a program started. And there's certainly a lot of really exciting advancements that practitioners have made to bring account-based marketing forward in terms of the sophistication and the creativity that are being put into this strategy. As I said, at Triblio, we've had the privilege to work with hundreds of customers. These are just a few of them, and the reason I always want to start out our presentations by sharing some of their names is really just to highlight the fact that Triblio is we're a software company. We love enabling our customers to do great account-based marketing, but we've also learned just a tremendous amount from them, from the practitioners that we work with, their ideas, the risks they've taken, the creativity they've brought to this. So all the case studies, all the learnings that we have as a company, we really owe to our customers, and then being willing to share their insights with us and work on these challenges with us. So all the stories that I'll be sharing later on today about the insights that we have are thanks to us just getting to work with great customers like the ones you see here. One last thing before I hand things off to Bob to begin today's content is I do want to introduce you to the Triblio ABM platform. If you're not already familiar with it, Triblio makes an account-based marketing solution. It's built on an orchestration and targeting engine that allows us to understand who your addressable market is, the intent signals they're showing, the engagement you have with them, and then be able to orchestrate programs in several ways. The first is through account-based advertising. So we're partnered with ad publishing networks to get display ads, retargeting in front of the right people at these accounts. Website personalization, where we actually change out the messaging to be appropriate for the account, segments, et cetera, that your content is attracting. And then last, sales activation, which I'll go into a bit more detail about at the end. On top of owning those channels for ourselves, we are also connected to multiple other parts of the MarTech ecosystem. Your CRM and marketing automation would plug into this engine, informing our scoring and our segmentation and targeting. And we're also partnered with all the major advertising networks as well as analytic systems and data warehouses that allow you to make the targeting and analytics portion of your ABM program more robust. So that's Triblio in a nutshell. You'll be seeing more of that in some customer examples later. But with that, I'm going to hand things over to Bob from Serious Decisions, now part of the Forrester family, to start us off with our content for today.
Well, thanks, Andrew. And first, it's a pleasure to be with the folks from Triblio today on this webinar. My name is Bob Peterson. I'm a Vice President, Principal Analyst in the Account-Based Marketing Service at Serious Decisions, now part of the Forrester family. I've been with Serious for, well, I just started my 8th year supporting clients as they bring into practice their own account-based marketing initiative. Before that, I was an account-based marketer myself, coming out of the ERP space primarily, where I learned the trade craft of account-based marketing. So I've been both a practitioner as well as helping companies stand up their own ABM efforts for nearly 8 years now at Serious Decisions. So, Andrew, when I look back on your agenda, the first point was defining what ABM is, and it's I think, an important part of starting our conversation today, because ABM has become so popular. I mean, our market data at Serious Decisions says that upwards of 93% of B2B organizations around the globe, of all companies, shapes, and sizes, are considering ABM as a key growth strategy. And there's no surprise, because ABM, more than any other strategy, is the best hope to align sales and marketing around the accounts that matter most. And you'll see in the green bar at the top of this particular slide how we define account-based marketing at Serious Decisions. I think it's also important to talk about, what ABM is not. I think ABM is more than simply a technology or a one-off campaign. It's a business strategy, and it's a strategy that, again, aligns sales and marketing around those accounts. It certainly leverages technology and campaigns, but it's important to start with thinking about the big picture of what ABM actually is. What you're looking at on this slide is the ABM Priorities architecture that we use at Serious Decisions to help our companies think about the big picture about what ABM is. And those 5 priorities, starting with, on the left, ABM strategy, goals, and alignment. Next, ABM program planning and execution, ABM measurement, ABM team design and skill development, and ABM infrastructure. Those 5 priorities, they act as the foundational pillars to help companies implement and operationalize a more comprehensive and sustainable account-based marketing program. When you were looking at the ABM priorities, that the last one I showed, the ABM infrastructure priority, that's the one that I find many clients struggle with, because that's where we talk about the world of data and insights and technologies that are available to help B2B marketers, again, implement and operationalize account-based marketing. And data and insights are such an important part of ABM. It's the rocket fuel that drives high-performing ABM programs. So I wanted to start by being clear about this world of account and buying group insights. And I wanted to start with a couple of key challenges that we see clients trying to overcome at Serious Decisions. And there are 2 I'm going to talk about. First of all, on the seller side, so what you as a company might be trying to do, gathering those account and buying group and contact level insights. And what we're trying to do is understand in the marketplace, well, who's actively looking, how serious are they? Are they tire kickers, or are they indeed in a serious buying cycle? And what signals are being given off to help you know what they in fact truly need. So as sellers, that's what we're trying to figure out. Similarly, we find that buyers, B2B buyers, have challenges that they're trying to overcome as well. And they're just trying to have what we call a relevant buying experience. And in this case, it's a digital buying experience. And some of the things that we find that B2B buyers are struggling with is trying to understand where they can find information that addresses what they're looking for. They've sometimes expressed that they're overwhelmed with the abundance of content that's available, and it all seems to be disconnected. So this becomes very confusing for today's B2B buyer. And that brings up the question, Well, how do we solve this riddle? Close this gap that exists between B2B sellers and B2B buyers. That's the real challenge that we think needs to be addressed when it comes to any type of effective account-based marketing. Well, we think that the key that helps close the gap between what B2B sellers and B2B buyers are looking for is all around what we're going to be talking about today, and it is content and relevant content. That's relevant in terms of visual and messaging. That's the key to being able to close the gap between these two groups. Before we start diving into content and addressing that gap I just referred to, I wanted to step back for a moment and talk about insights, and then we'll naturally lead us into a conversation about content customization. But it has to start with insights. And what you're looking at here is the account planning methodology that we provide our clients to help get to more customized relevant content. And it's this 4-step process that starts with your ABM accounts. What goals are you trying to achieve within those accounts? What are the business imperatives that exist within the account? Audience insights, which is what do I know about the contacts within your accounts that help provide those critical clues to content customization. Resource inventory is the content audit process to assess what you currently have available to meet those needs and where you might have gaps. And finally, engagement planning is the tactic plan that you put together that's based upon goals, insights, and available assets. So let's dive a little bit more into that second area, audience insights. And this is a 2-step process. First is, who do we know within your high-value ABM accounts? And secondly, what do we know about them? And let's start with the first. So in this case, I'm providing an example of how we work with our clients to help them think about creating more of a demand map. Looking within your ABM accounts, and my hypothetical company I'm showing here in the upper left is Acme Corporation, and I'm illustrating how I've created a demand map that looks at, it's not just an account that buys, it may be various buying centers or buying groups that are actually making purchasing decisions. So in this case, I've got a finance division at headquarters, I've got an HR division, and I've got a regional finance group in Latin America. A pretty common example of how a large ABM account might have multiple different opportunities to sell into. So that's a great place to start. But on the left, we're showing how you need to look deeper within the buying group. When we know in B2B today that buying decisions are made with multiple people. It's not an individual that typically makes a buying decision. There are groups of people that are involved in making those decisions. So in this example, I'm showing various personas who might be involved in that decision. A champion, an influencer, a ratifier, an executive. There could be others, users, partners, etc. But in this case, you're getting much more precise when it comes to audience insights because you're mapping out individuals who are involved in each of those buying opportunities in my hypothetical example of Acme. So now we've accomplished the first part of understanding audience insights, and that's the audience, the who's involved in the account. Now let's talk about the what and the why. So this is the care-abouts, if you will, of those different people. And when we think about audience insights within an ABM setting, we think about different categories of insights. What's the job of that data or insight to help you lead to more effective content customization? In this particular slide, I'm showing an example of how you might organize your insights based on the job that they do. So in the blue bar at the top, you'll see the different categories of insights: profile, activity, and derived. And then you'll see in the chart that I've built out an example of each of those, a potential source, and how you might use that within your company. So for example, let's look at profile insights. That's the most basic level of information. That's the firmographic, technographic information, about the account, what industries are they in, what contacts do I know, business imperatives. Those are the pretty basic level of data and insights that you would need to know to do any type of effective account-based marketing. Under activity, you're seeing, well, as the name implies, it's more action-based. data and insights, where we're seeing perhaps we're gathering intent signals, or we're noticing if there are leadership changes within an organization, or particular insights that are gathered from social media. Those are action-based insights. And the final category is derived data and insights, and this is insight that's derived from other data sources. So this might come from if you're creating an ideal customer profile, for example, or maybe you're using a predictive analytics solution to do more lookalike modeling to find out where you've been successful in the past and how do you gather those attributes and extract them to help find better accounts. So I like to think of these as profile data as being the nouns, activity data being the verbs, and derived being the adjectives or adverbs. And it's important to think about all of these in a comprehensive view to really understand what you need when it comes to insights. So now let's talk about the critical part of the ABM process, and that's turning those data and insights that you've worked so hard to collect into delivering more relevant, customized content to your ABM contacts. And this is an interesting data slide that comes from our analysis that we did, where we looked at serious decisions at high-performing ABM programs versus their low-performing peers. So you'll see in this chart, high-performing ABM programs reflected in the green bars, whereas low-performing ABM programs are in blue. And what I wanted to show here is that there's a marked difference in terms of how high-performing ABM teams are much more likely, 30% more likely to customize content for ABM accounts. So I think this is an important bit of data that helps us understand why certain programs are outperforming others, because companies are investing in content customization to drive more relevance. So great, content customization makes sense, right? But it's not as easy as it seems, right? And particularly when you think about the number of clients that we work with who are trying to achieve more scale in their ABM programs with an extended list of accounts, customization can be challenging. Also, are we effectively able to gather those account insights that I talked about earlier, and are we able to do that at scale? Are we able to repurpose existing content where it's relevant and appropriate? And finally, do we have the resources, both human and maybe even technological resources, to deliver customization at scale? That's the hard part of this process. All right, so we all know customized content is really important to ABM, and you could see when I shared that previous slide that talked about high-performing ABM programs are 30% more likely to customize content, and we talked about how hard it is to do that at scale. Well, I'm going to turn it over to Andrew in a moment to talk about how Triblio can help address those concerns, but before I do, I wanted to leave you with this last slide from my perspective, and it's how we think about customization for ABM at Serious Decisions. And we think about when you're considering the levels of customization you can deliver, you think about three different things. First of all, there's that insights word again. What's the level and quality of insights that you're able to gather, not just at the account level, but within the buying group or down to the individual. Assessing, secondly, your content. What do you have to work with, and where do you have gaps, and do you have a plan to address any contact gaps that may be required to support customization? And third is activation. Do you understand the delivery channels that are preferred by your contacts, and are you able to adhere to the rules of timing that help make sure that you're delivering relevant content in a way that your buyers want to receive that content? So Andrew, I want to turn it over to you now to talk about how Triblio can help.
All right, well, that was a great setup for thinking through some practical examples. I'm going to walk through, just from Triblio's customers, two specific examples of how we see customers trying to personalize well and to do so at scale in their account-based marketing programs. So this first one has to do with something Bob alluded to earlier, which is doing campaign orchestration with third-party intent, using third-party intent as that insight piece to understand what we know about a specific account and how that changes the messaging that we will use when reaching out to that account. So the example that I'll share of this is from a customer of ours, Forrester. They are an IT solutions provider, and the challenge they bring to account-based marketing is both one of prioritization as well as one of personalization. They have a large named account list, several thousand accounts that they could be reaching out to at any given time, and more than 15 different specific solutions that they can offer when they're reaching out, from DevOps managed services to cloud security, disparate services like that. And they needed to align the messaging that they were delivering through their marketing channels with what the sales team was going to be following up with. And they also needed to make sure that they were spending their time, both from a marketing resources standpoint and a sales outreach standpoint, on the right accounts, and orchestrating off of third-party intent as a key insight is what enabled them to do that. So I'll walk you through how they made that work. So I'm sure this is a goal that's familiar to many of you running ABM programs, but just as a goal for their program, they wanted to engage those named accounts early in the buying cycle with relevant content. And again, the challenge is that there were so many potential accounts to be reaching out to. Which ones should be at the top of their list going into a given week, and what's the messaging that each one of those accounts would be most likely to respond to. And the approach they took to tackling that challenge, as Bob alluded to earlier, began with insights. What do they know about these accounts, and how does that influence their planning? So at the very beginning of their program that feeds into it, they used a mix of third-party intent as well as actual first-party engagement to identify, of all the thousands of accounts in their list, which couple hundred on a given week were actually showing the most interest, so most likely to be in a buying cycle right now. But then not just to understand who was showing the most interest, but what are the specific solutions that they were showing interest in. So by using the third-party intent and their first-party engagement data and breaking that into solution-specific clusters, if you will, they were able to see that account A was showing a lot of interest maybe in their DevOps services, whereas another account was showing a lot of interest, but maybe in cloud security or one of their other services. So after they had that insight into which accounts were showing interest in which solutions, they would begin to try to verify that that buying signal was real by showing some display advertising specific to that solution to the right people in that account. So if they saw intent signals that indicate an account was interested in cloud security, they would show these ads to personas that matched that solution in those accounts, just giving them messaging about who Forrester was and trying to see if they could get some initial responses to validate that that interest was real. Once accounts responded to those ads, and that could be directly by a click, it could also be indirectly by Googling for Forrester and just ending up right on the home page, they would then personalize the website, continuing that messaging. So if someone had seen DevOps messaging in the display ads, once they hit the home page, that account would also again see that DevOps messaging, see CTAs, webinars, white paper downloads, that type of thing that were relevant to that offer. And if they saw enough engagement from accounts with that first-party content, they would actually drop those accounts into an outbound sales motion. So this is not just a matter of sending a list of accounts over to the sales team, but marketing actually worked to design specific outbound cadences with call scripts, what they should be saying on LinkedIn when they reach out. So the sales team knew exactly which accounts to be reaching out to and also what messaging to be using. And we're able to follow up well on the nurturing and use those same insights, essentially, that marketing had for their part of the program. And their results for this were really, really strong, and I'll be able to go through that in a second. But the early stage research signals were very effective for understanding which accounts were most likely to respond. The SDRs, when they did get to the point of reaching out, were able to, again, divide up their messaging to align to the signals that that account had been showing and validated signals. So not just relying on one signal in isolation, but they use third-party intent, first-party engagement, and this mix of things to understand that a signal is real and worth following up on. And then marketing was able to nurture them correctly throughout this. What that allowed them to achieve from a results standpoint was absolutely fantastic. So compared to their old outbound approach that they had for reaching out to their target accounts, they were able to dramatically improve results. Their reps were twice as likely in this program to book a meeting over the phone when they reached out to their prospects, because not only were they reaching out to the right accounts, but they're reaching out with the right message. So again, using insights to make sure that they're delivering that relevant buying experience that Bob described earlier. And that showed up in their digital engagement rates as well. Their email open rates from the sales team were way up. Their click-through rates were. So they were adding more accounts to the pipeline, getting more meetings set for their sales team, and also getting more digital engagement as they're reaching out. So all signals here pointed to, again, that using that insights-based approach for prioritization and segmentation was delivering the buying experience that these prospects appreciated. Now, in Veristore's case, this account-based marketing strategy was applied toward new account acquisition, but we have seen similar tactics and workflows, if you will, applied to other use cases as well in other parts of an ABM program. So we have seen teams use this effectively for field event planning, understanding, using, again, third-party and first-party intent signals where they might want to plan their upcoming events based on the level of interest they're seeing in different geographies. We've seen them use it for upsell triggers, so understanding when a customer success manager or account manager should be reaching out to offer that new product at the right time in a way that actually served customers and gave them a relevant touch point. Again, retention risk, I think, is an emerging use case for this that we've begun to see, where typically the churn reduction teams, customer success, are, traditionally have really based their work off of in-product signals. So is somebody's usage going down? When's their last login? But you can actually use these third-party and first-party engagement signals with content as a way of understanding churn risk as well, and having proactive campaigns. So for instance, if you were to see that one of your customers was researching a competitor, that would be a relevant signal to send to your CSM team as opposed to just product usage. We've seen it used for win-back opportunities, teams understanding that maybe they lost an opportunity, but if they begin to see third-party intent spike again, or even some anonymous first-party engagements they wouldn't have seen otherwise, that can trigger the rep to actually follow up, whereas maybe they wouldn't have done so otherwise for another 12 months, kind of coming up on a renewal cycle. And then finally, we've seen these types of insights work really well for content planning in buyer journeys also. So what you saw in Veristore's case was them sequencing messaging throughout kind of the very top, middle, and bottom of the funnel, depending on how far in the research someone was. And using these same insights, teams have been able to understand what's the best content I should be reaching out with. At what point in a buyer's journey should I be giving people my prospects thought leadership content versus boxing out competitors versus addressing implementation use cases. I think there's some common assumptions that as marketers we can make about what content fits into what part of the funnel, but I can tell you from having looked at some of these studies up close with our customers that we've come across a number of surprises where teams thought that, for instance, competitive content would be relevant at one part of the buyer's journey, and in fact, it needed to be delivered kind of 6 months off of when they were expecting. So good insights to be looking into there for these use cases. So the second example of personalizing content in account-based marketing that I want to look at is orchestrating marketing and sales together. And we saw this a little bit in Veristore, but I want to dive into what it looks like for a sales team specifically to be set up well to deliver personalized messaging. So if I could leave everyone with just one insight from this part of the presentation, it would be this, that sales alerts are not sales activation. And what I mean by that is that if you want your sales team to be following up with relevant content as part of your account-based marketing program, it is not sufficient to simply alert them about things that are happening in the account and hope that they will know the right messaging. When Triblio talks about sales activation in our platform and as a use case, we really mean something much more specific that really sets sales reps up for success at scale to be reaching out and delivering relevant buying experiences for their prospects. Now, that might sound intuitive or obvious to everyone at first blush, but what we found when working with prospects and getting to know different account-based marketing programs is that even though we'll get initial agreement on sales activation being so important, when we kind of dig under the surface of what's happening in a lot of account-based marketing programs today, and especially look at this area of sales activation, what we see really happening is something along these lines, where marketing will drive some activity, build some engagement, and then whether it's delivered over a Slack message, an email alert, CRM, chat or post, or something else, the message that gets delivered to sales is something along these lines. Hey rep, Acme was on our website today, you should follow up. Maybe there's a little bit more detail than that, but that's the gist of what a lot of sales teams are receiving today from their account-based marketing programs. And I can tell you from having worked with hundreds of reps in these programs at this point that this approach to just notifying sales about stuff raises a lot more questions than it actually answers. And for that reason, fails to get engagement and buy-in from the sales team, and ultimately really limits the results that sales can get and the amount of participation that sales will have in your account-based marketing program. What sales needs is what we call sales activation, which is answering all the questions that a sales rep is going to want to answer before they reach out. Why is this account on the top of my list? What's that persuasive message that I can reach out with that would actually get them to convert to the next stage? Who at the account should I reach out to? So are there specific contacts that I should be prioritizing at this account, or am I just working blind? And then what should I say? What's the custom content? What does it look like for me to personalize my outreach and not just take this list that marketing has given me and batch and blast them the same way that we would in like a marketing automation program, for example? So in order to unpack what this looks like in as much detail as possible for you, I'm actually going to put the spotlight back onto Triblio's own use of our platform, show you what our sales activation challenge looks like, and then walk you through some specifics of how this works in a bit more detail than I could do if talking about any of our specific customers' strategies. So first of all, just so you understand our context, our sales team, the SDR team that we're doing this orchestration with, has a quarterly sales appointment goal within our ICP, probably similar to many of the SDR teams that you all work with. There are 3 intent-based plays that we want that team to be running in order to build pipeline, and that has to be orchestrated for us within 6 distinct sales territories. So it's not just really one list that we need to be managing, but making sure that we're spreading demand evenly across these territories that our program is built on. So given that as the context, how do we approach activating our sales team for successful outbound in account-based marketing rather than just alerting them and hoping for the best in their follow-up? Well, it starts with a process of, on a weekly basis, prioritizing the most likely buyers that match our ICP. And we do that with something called a Triblio Smart Score, which is essentially a blend of third-party intent and various first-party engagement signals. After we have that list built, we then sort those accounts into 3 specific playbooks that are going to drive our personalized messaging. One of those playbooks has to do with accounts that are reaching or researching competitors of ours. A second playbook, the messaging has to do with a specific use case that we're promoting in a given quarter. And the third playbook has to do with field events that we're planning and outreach to accounts in areas where we have field events planned. But after we have those accounts sorted into those playbooks, we automatically enrich those accounts with contacts before our sales team ever touches them. So when those accounts get passed over to sales, we've already found appropriate contacts that match our personas that we think are appropriate for each one of these playbooks. And then we take this a step further and actually build out personalized one-to-one content for each one of these accounts that we're going to be asking our sales team to reach out to. So this is a tool called a Triblio Smart Page, and essentially for every account that an SDR will be reaching out to, Triblio automatically generates a one-to-one landing page that has a unique URL with the prospect's name in it, unique messaging that's based on the playbook that they're in. So if somebody's in our competitor playbook, we'll reach out to them about leveling up their ABM program with us, and the messaging is a little bit different than this. And then we have messaging that's appropriate for these other playbooks as well. So different variations on these smart pages are built out, but each one of them has account-specific customizations in it. And so when the SDRs drop these into their outbound programs, whether that's on LinkedIn or over email, the prospects are seeing that there's a special URL that's been set up for them that they're very likely to pass around and use to nurture others in the organization internally. And then finally, each one of these accounts, after it's been prepped, so getting sorted into a playbook, enriched with contacts, and having a one-to-one page built, will be dropped into an actual SDR cadence. And this is, again, messaging that's for LinkedIn scripts, email, calling, that are aligned with all of these other, aligned with these playbooks that we've developed. And on top of this, at the same time, of course, we're doing display advertising. But you can see how this is a lot richer as a process than simply notifying our reps at the very top of this process that, hey, you know, this account is showing some interest, you should reach out to them. We've prepped for them the contacts. We've prepped for them the playbook to be running. We've even prepped for them one-to-one content that they can use to as a door opener for each one of these accounts. And all they need to do is then take these, validate and accept these accounts into their process, and then begin their cadences. And so what would otherwise be maybe an arduous process of building their list every week is automated for them, and they're given the best accounts possible to follow up with, and also the right messaging to use when nurturing them. We started walking through this process with our customers a short while ago, and initially the main thing I was getting questions about is those one-to-one smart pages, how those work. So I've added a slide here just to explain that. So I mentioned that a smart page is customized for each account, and I've kind of broken that out for you here, what that actually looks like. So every account that gets a smart page has a unique URL, so when these are sent out to prospects, they can see that this isn't a generic landing page or a generic PDF, but is something that's been prepped for them with insights about them and hopefully relevant content for them. Then there's custom messaging that you can use either template messaging or merge fields for, reading out of CRM data or any other first-party data you have. Resource cards that are specific, in our case, to the playbook. So again, if somebody is showing intent and they go into our field event playbook, there's going to be resources from past field events and an invitation link here, information about the restaurant that we're going to be at, that type of thing. And then finally, and our sales reps love this, we actually automatically put in the correct contact information for the sales rep for each one of those accounts. So when one of them is reaching out to nurture one of these, there's, again, that personal touch of that prospect, seeing who they'd be working with, who is this individual that's been reaching out, and they have the ability to book a calendar invite right from this page, as well as contact the rep directly. So that's what the Smart Page strategy looks like. And again, we found this very effective just as a hyper-personalized content solution for account-based marketing. So if you do want to run hyper-personalized ABM programs like that, or any of the other use cases we've talked about today, what are some next steps you can take? Well, we'd love for you to connect with one of our ABM consultants, and there'll be an invitation after the webinar completes for you to set up a meeting. If you take one of those meetings, we'll go through a number of things. First of all, benchmarking your current ABM program, understanding the accounts that you're reaching out to, and measuring the effectiveness of the engagement and the type of intent data those accounts are showing. We'll also go through a detailed analysis of your target accounts. Are they responding and finding the content that you would expect? who else are they researching, and what's their customer journey look like before they reach you, so you can get a detailed view of what it would look like to run better campaigns to get better results. And then finally, we'll recommend some personalized ABM campaigns that would make sense for either the verticals that you're reaching or the type of segments that your program is designed around, whether that's one-to-one, one-to-few, one-to-many, etc. So if you're interested in doing this, it's extremely valuable. And again, the option will be at the end of this webinar, simply to fill out your information, and we'll get in touch with you to set up one of these consultations. So I definitely encourage you all to do that as a follow-up, so you can get some of these resources and have some of these tactics applied personally to your program by one of our experts. So for takeaways here before wrapping up with some Q&A, again, the things that we're hoping you're taking away from the content today, first of all, build those insights from multiple data sources to personalize your campaigns. The account insights are really the foundation of personalization in ABM, and the more types of insights you're working with, certainly the better. Use intent to prioritize and segment your accounts. So I think intent data has initially been really popular as just a prioritization tool. You'll have sales teams using this to pull lists of leads and things like that. But it offers a lot more. It allows you to understand not just who's in market, but which set of messaging, which solution they're actually showing the most interest in, and you can have pre-built playbooks then that don't just reach out to everybody with the same message, but actually have an insight-based program as you're reaching out to these warm accounts. And then finally, again, sales alerts are not sales activation. So when you're thinking about content personalization as part of account-based marketing, certainly the marketing components of that is important. You want your website personalization to be spot on. You want your advertising to be in sync. But you also, in order to drive results, are going to need your sales team to be delivering a message that's consistent with what marketing has been doing. And to do that, it's going to take a lot more than alerts. You need to think all the way through the process and make sure you have a real activation program in place, and not just hoping that sending over email alerts is going to get the job done. So thank you for spending this time with us. I'm going to hand things back over to Kirsten now, who's been fielding questions to lead us through the Q&A.
Thank you, Bob and Andrew, for taking the time to share your insights on what's such a hot topic for marketing right now. We have a few questions that came in during the webinar, so let's dive straight into those. The first question is for you, Bob. You talked about the importance of insights driving personalization. What advice can you give to clients wanting to get that started?
Yeah, a really important question, and probably a good place to start, Kirsten, is thinking about the process of gathering insights to support ABM is something that I encourage clients to think about in a crawl, walk, run fashion, where sometimes I think it can get to be a little overwhelming if you look at that slide I showed of all the different types of insight categories and think, boy, do I have to have all of those from the get-go? And the answer is that's not really realistic. I think it's more likely and more achievable to look at it through that crawl, walk, run approach, where maybe at the beginning you have a set of must-have data and insights that include some of the basic data elements that I talked about, the firmographic, technographic, demographic information that all marketers really should have. And then think about how to improve that going forward, to build a plan to include the should-have data. This is more recommended data that adds on what you gathered in that must-have category. And then finally, maybe look deeper to the really nice-to-have, the more advanced levels of data, for example, that would understand more about specific delivery mechanisms of the contacts within your accounts, or even understanding where they are in the buyer's journey or the customer life cycle. That is really important to build that plan. So don't feel overwhelmed that you don't have all of those data elements that I talked about. Think about building it over time. The other thing that I encourage folks to think about is that insights aren't something that falls exclusively on the shoulders of account-based marketers. We always talk about insights or a team sport that require contributions from various folks within the organization. Of course, the account-based marketers play a pivotal role, but the account executives, sales reps, they're definitely contributing via their comprehensive sales account plans that they're developing and sharing with marketing, marketing operations or sales operations, importing and rationalizing data where there might be gaps. So the challenge is to think about all those different folks who could contribute those insights and getting them together in a usable format.
Great. Thank you, Bob, for answering that. The next question, I think, Andrew, it would be great for you to answer. I work with a large sales team, and it would be a challenge to manage sales activation for all of them. What do you recommend for companies that need a crawl, walk, run approach?
Sure. Yeah, and with any large team, you definitely want to start with a subset. And I have seen customers use a few really good tactics for doing that well. The first one is just in terms of picking out the initial reps that you'll be working with, to think about the reps first rather than the accounts. Normal account-based marketing process, after setting your goals, you start with account selection. When thinking about involving reps, it's easier, and we've seen more success when people think about the reps first. Which ones do they already have a good relationship with? Do they expect will be, highly collaborative and work quickly in a young ABM program? So think about those reps first. And usually when I say that to marketers live, they're all nodding their heads halfway through the sentence because they've already picked them out in their mind. They know who they are. The second is to then let those sales reps actually be the ones to evangelize the program. So rather than you trying to, trot things out at SKO and roll things out and get the whole sales team excited all on your own, what we've seen work really well is to invest very heavily in making that pilot group, the first 5 or 10 reps, making them very successful, making sure they know how to run the plays, how to use the insights. And if they're getting to their number, if they're getting wins out of this program, they are going to be your biggest champions and advocates on the team. Others are going to see their success and going to want to participate in that themselves. So investing heavily in the success of your early users and letting them evangelize the program to others is the second point. And last, I would say, don't make things overcomplicated in terms of the types of sales activation you want to run right off the bat. It's easy to think, if you have a dozen or 2 dozen solutions that you support, that you need to have plays built out for all of them or for every single competitor right off the bat. It's much easier as you're starting to supplement your sales team's workflows with these account-based plays to just start with something small, add in a few things that are going to be easy and quick wins, and then get more complex from there as you learn things over time. But the work of designing the program should really be done kind of in the field as you're getting feedback, not in a conference room and kind of set in stone and then try to roll things out in that form. It'll need to change, it'll need to adapt. So don't make it too complicated at first, and be ready to incorporate the sales team's feedback as you deploy it to more people.
Great. Well, thanks again for answering those questions. For those listening, thanks for joining us. If you have any additional questions following the webinar, please reach out to us at info@triblio.com.